I can speak now to journalist and author David Ariosto. In his latest book, Open Space, he discusses the science and technology behind the power competition in space. David, as a space enthusiast yourself, I suppose you watched the docking. Were you excited?
Oh, it's always interesting to see these things actually up close and in action. And the live feed is something that is relatively new in terms of like this whole paradigm shift that we've seen in commercial space. SpaceX is the only game in town at this point. Boeing was supposed to sort of change that math and kind of provide a degree of diversity to the landscape. NASA just doesn't want to have to rely on just one company. And yet the math has changed a little bit now with Elon Musk in the White House and just the sheer overall dominance SpaceX has shown. But, Starliner with those helium problems in terms of its thrusters and just like the bevy of problems that they faced even before launch, it showcases that, SpaceX, the primacy of this company is something that just can't be ignored. But watching it, it's hard not to get excited about just the marvel of engineering that you get to see unfold in real time with these feeds.
Well, tell us a little bit more about the company, because I believe Boeing's Starliner capsule had quite a few problems. NASA had to rely on a SpaceX lift. Is SpaceX the only viable option left now?
After the Columbia disaster in 2003, there was this sort of steady degrade or slow retirement of the shuttle program, and after that vehicle retired, there was this huge reliance on Russian Soyuz vehicles to get into orbit. And obviously, the geopolitical situation has changed, and so the emphasis was to look toward the commercial sector. You sort of see dribs and drabs of this during the second Bush administration. Obviously, with the cancellation of Constellation under the Obama administration, the push toward private was much more front and center. But the hope was always having multiple options, at very least, just to keep costs down. But at this point, SpaceX is the only game in town, and not only that, but as we start to look at the Artemis program, the primacy of the moon, the emphasis that Elon Musk has put on Mars, Starship, and we've seen sort of the iterative testing of that vehicle. It's hard not to see SpaceX a little bit in the driver's seat. And I even get into the Starlink constellation, which is by far the largest constellation in the global market right now. So, it's an interesting time now in space, in the commercial era. We've kind of reached this maturation process stage that is right there for everybody to see with regard to Starliner and now Dragon.
And as you point out, NASA's also being affected by the Trump administration's push to slash government spending.
This is something that in my conversations with folks inside NASA, they're sort of waiting to see. We've seen layoffs already, but we've seen layoffs in other agencies as well, only to see higher backs. So, the question mark I think people are sort of wondering is will NASA start to focus more on human spaceflight, which seems to jive a bit more closely with what Elon Musk has been describing, to the detriment of some of the science programs that NASA has been a hallmark of NASA's efforts. I mean, I think anybody who looks at the James Webb Telescope and the imagery that comes out of those can't help but just marvel at those images and sort of our place in the universe. And there's a knock-on effect to that in terms of, those who get interested in STEM and sort of the broader wonderment. It's hard to quantify those things. But in the context of where you might be looking to cut and what the initial mission of NASA was back in the 1960s was a space race against the Soviet Union. Exactly. We might be back in a similar kind of mindset with regard to not only the push towards the moon, Mars, all these new commercial space stations, but also the rivalry with China, which has created a new sort of a geopolitical impetus for all of this.
David Ariosto, thank you very much for your insights.